Hi, and welcome to tonight's event where we're going to be talking all about how to make the most of a global internship. I am your host, Katie Stanfield. I'm the Executive Director of Social Marketing at Kaplan, and we're all excited that you've decided to join us tonight to learn a little bit about the experiences you can have in college. I do have a few housekeeping notes to review before we get started. First of all, the session will be about an hour long, and we'll be taking questions throughout the hour. We'll take questions from the live chat function to the right of the video in default view on YouTube. So please post any questions, chat us your thoughts, and anything that you want to ask our panelists, and our moderator will send them to us to answer. We also have Joel from CRCC Asia in the chat, and he'll be answering questions specifically about the programs they have to offer, and sending you any links or helpful information that will help you learn more about opportunities available to you. The session will be recorded, so you can watch it at any point and access it right here on our YouTube channel. So thanks again for joining us. As many of you know, there's so many awesome opportunities available to students today to expand their networks, immerse themselves in a new culture, and gain opportunities and experiences that will help them successfully transition from college life to a career. So we're fortunate to be joined tonight by Elizabeth Opong, Sam Kwok, and Max Oliveira, and we're going to meet them now. So Elizabeth, if you want to wave at everybody. Elizabeth is a CRCC Asia alumnus and currently a second-year analyst in the Equity Linked and Hybrid Solutions Group at Barclays, where she covers healthcare and natural resources, which sounds fascinating and amazing. We have Sam Kwok. Sam is also an alumnus and the founder of Jingjobs.com, which is a platform that connects bilingual young professionals worldwide with China-based startup opportunities and positions. And then we have Max Olivero. Max is the Field Experience Coordinator at James Madison College at Michigan State University. He's responsible for the JMC Field Experience Program, supervising internships and experiential learning opportunities for anywhere between 50 and 200 students each semester. So they're going to share their experiences with us, some of their best advice about internships, how to make the most of these experiences, how to figure out which is right for you and what you should be thinking about when you're considering ways to expand your educational and work experiences while you're still in college or even after. So Max, we're going to start with you and get some clarification around the various types of experiential learning opportunities that exist. So we hear a lot about study abroads and internships. And so can you walk us through the differences and benefits between like a traditional study abroad and interning abroad in a program like CRCC?
Absolutely. Well, good evening from East Lansing. It's nighttime here, so hope your day is going well wherever you are. So in general, I would say the biggest thing to keep in mind about experiential internships is that you're learning by doing. So internships and experiential education in general can be, of course, internships. They can be service learning experiences, undergraduate research, study abroad, other professional experiences, those sorts of things. One thing to keep in mind if you're on a college campus is joining a leadership role in a student organization can be a really good opportunity to start to build those sorts of relevant skills and take on an experiential education opportunity right on your own campus. But in general, the difference between doing an internship abroad versus doing a study abroad would you want to be doing an experience where you're learning, you're taking courses, you're going to a university, or you're doing things. So you're in an actual workplace, you're completing projects, you're doing more sort of hands-on professional sorts of skills. Study abroad programs also tend to be a bit more structured in terms of the courses that are available, the daily schedule, what sorts of things you're doing, you're going to class, you're hanging out with the student cohort, versus internships, which tend to be a bit more independent. Usually you go to work your internship every morning, maybe by yourself or with a smaller group of students. Doing an international internship, you might be going with maybe an independent internship, maybe with a smaller group of students, whereas study abroad programs tend to be a bit larger and more structured in that sense. One big consideration I think to take if you're interested in doing a study abroad versus an international internship is a study abroad program tends to be for a bit more personal development, growth as an individual, whereas an internship tends to allow you to build more professional skills relevant for career readiness, getting ready for graduation. In general, I always recommend that students consider, first of all, the cost of doing a program, what a study abroad program might cost versus an international internship, what sorts of scholarships might be available. So one thing that's true at Michigan State University, for example, is that many students, there are a lot more scholarship and funding available for internships.
That's a great way to think about that, Max. So looking at an individual opportunity to grow and learn and immerse yourself in a culture versus one that's really focused on building your skills and preparing you for the next stage of your career, which is what, if you're looking for those kinds of opportunities, then an internship abroad may be a great experience. So I want to ask Elizabeth, and then Sam, I'm going to kick it over to you to answer the same question. But what inspired you to seek an internship, and specifically an internship abroad?
Yeah, so I was a sophomore in college where it kind of first came up. Originally, I was one of those who kind of thought that I would be one of those students who stayed in college long term, did my PhD and everything. And I think what really kicked off this whole idea of even going into business and what has shaped my career to stay was that I went to a career fair on campus, found out about CRCC Asia, and kind of used that as an opportunity to see if I could leverage some of the language skills I had developed through my time in high school and college and go abroad. And I think, when I was going, the rationale was this is a great opportunity to combine study abroad with interning, so getting some of that professional experience. And I think as I walk away from it, one of the benefits of doing an internship abroad is that you do gain a really unique skill set. So not only are you learning how to do your regular technical analysis or whatever your internship may entail, but you also have the cultural piece. So you're learning how to balance some of the differences in culture and things like that. So that was one of the benefits I found of the internship. And I think looking back, it was something that really shaped my career going forward.
I can imagine that's a lot to experience, which is great and fantastic. Sam, tell us a little bit about what inspired you to study abroad, and then we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about what you learned from these experiences.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I graduated from University of Sydney and realized that I didn't really want to just jump straight into a full-time job. I wanted to also learn Chinese. I am half Chinese, but I didn't grow up speaking it too much. So that was something that was always of interest to me. And so I signed up for CRCC study plus internship for 3 months because I figured once I finished learning some Chinese, it would be a shame to kind of just go straight back to Australia and not, I guess, get to experience actually using it in a useful sense, like in a workplace. And so that was my original plan. But it turns out 2 months is actually not long enough to pick up enough Chinese to be able to use it in a very useful way and have it as an asset, I guess, in terms of landing a job or landing an internship. So I ended up extending my Chinese learning for the full 3 months.
That's really interesting. And language is one of those things that does take some time and practice to really pick up. Elizabeth, you mentioned that you had taken some language in high school that you were leaning on. Did you study Chinese? Do you have a good ear for languages?
Yeah, so I started studying Chinese in my ninth grade of high school. And I think it's interesting because I always thought I was pretty good at Chinese, but it was only until I went and interned and kind of had that moment of, being in a meeting and having to convert a billion to Chinese, that was one of those moments that really kicks in that, you might have the language from a textbook sense, but kind of understanding it in a more practical sense, I didn't have it yet. And so what was great about that, it was a springboard for me to then go back to college and kind of reevaluate my courses to not only focus on kind of just knowing the basics of Chinese, but also focusing on developing that ability to speak in the business sense and things like that. So while I did have an experience where I already knew the language going for it, I look back at my peers in the program, a lot of them didn't have that. And I think for them too, it was a great learning opportunity. I think also not knowing the language and kind of working in that environment was interesting as well for them. So I think for students who are looking at these internships, you don't necessarily need to speak the language to go. I always say that, it's helpful, but it's not something that's a requirement at all.
That's so cool, that you were able to go back from this experience to college and reshape some of the coursework that you were planning to take to grow and develop in the way that you knew was going to be more useful to you long term for your career aspirations. And then Sam, I think that's really neat that you were able to spend a little bit more time learning Chinese in the way that you wanted to and knew that you needed to. So you said the program was flexible. So can you talk a little bit more about, some of the changes you were able to make once you were in the program in order to spend some more time and energy on your Chinese language skills?
Yeah, sure. So basically, about a month in, I kind of realized like I had overestimated my language learning abilities and really needed to kind of buckle down and do the full 3 months of study and really get my Chinese to a point where, I could confidently speak it in a business sense and be able to, I guess, really communicate effectively with potential, colleagues. So I think basically I just talked to CRCC and I said, look, I really, really would like to do the internship. However, I don't think I would get the, as much as I want to out of it until I finish these 3 months of study of Chinese. So they were really accommodating, and they kind of just helped me add on an extra month of Chinese and helped get me out of the internship commitment that I actually had said that I would do. But yeah, I think overall that was like a really good decision for me, and really helped shape like the foundation of my Chinese learning.
It's awesome to be able to have that kind of flexibility to learn and to get out of the kind of program like this that you would want to. So Max, when you were talking to students who are considering interning abroad and are looking at the different types of programs and opportunities available, is there a particular type of student, major, or just interest level that you recommend interning abroad versus other opportunities?
Yeah, so in terms of major, we were able to accommodate students from pretty much any major at MSU. So a wide variety from liberal arts to engineering, business, everything in between. So CRCC Asia is pretty good at placing students kind of in a wide variety of internships. In general, I would say a student that usually is an upper class student. So maybe they've taken some coursework at a university, I should say, and they can reflect on that university. As Liz and Sam have both mentioned, they can then kind of use the coursework that they've taken to apply to the internship, then use the internship to apply it to courses once they return to their university. So usually an upper class student, oftentimes it's helpful if they either come back to their university, but if you're graduating and your internship is maybe something that you're doing as a last graduation requirement, think about all the great networking opportunities that you can make while on your internship and then springboard into something after graduation.
So many opportunities there, and I think that's really well reflected in both Liz's story and Sam's story. Sam, you were graduated when you went on this internship, and then this experience inspired you to launch jingjobs.com. So can you tell us a little bit more about what exactly in your experience led you to stay in China and launch a career or a new job?
Yeah. So basically, when I was done with my study and I finished my program with CRCC, I realized that I actually really did want to stay and kind of, as I said before, like really use those skills. And as I was job searching, I was kind of overwhelmed by all of the different options and what was actually suitable for me. And being then, I guess, somewhat bilingual speaker, I really wanted to kind of use those skills and figure out how best I would be able to actually contribute or make an impact. And so as I was job hunting, I realized there were a lot of other people in a very similar situation to me, either Chinese returnees coming back from abroad or, international students or graduates that were looking for work in China as well. I also at the same time met a bunch of really cool startup people, entrepreneurs that were launching businesses and needed really, I guess, dynamic, like flexible colleagues and teams. So basically, I ended up matching a few of them, and that was the original inspiration for Jing Jobs, which basically connects young bilingual graduates with startup opportunities or startup focused opportunities in China, mainly in Beijing and Shanghai. But I guess my time with CRCC really helped, especially helped me with like building an initial network in China. I think what's very underrated during an actual internship experience or during your time abroad is actually how programs like that can help you plug into the local business networks and help you understand exactly what is going on within a professional sense that is different to your home country or your home city. So.
Sam, one question I get from students a lot is how they can start to make those connections while they're on their internship. So I wonder if you could maybe talk a little bit about, for the viewers, how you started to make those connections. How do you kind of undertake those networking activities?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely takes a little bit of discipline, just because obviously like after work, the last thing you want to do is go and I guess stand in a room full of people that you don't know. But especially in China, there are a ton of networking events and a ton of industry events and conferences that go on like every day of the week. And so I think programs like CRCC actually help you put together a list of all the different networks and networking events and things like that are going on, and you can actually just attend. And yeah, I guess networking is a skill in itself, because when you first get there, it is a little overwhelming with a bunch of, people that you've never spoken to in your life in a room. But yeah, I mean, everyone is very friendly, and you just kind of have to go up and make that initial contact and try and form some sort of connection.
So Liz and Sam, were there any cultural things that were surprising to you, especially when it came to networking, or some things that you either weren't prepared for or learned along the way networking that you found to be particularly valuable?
Yeah, I can jump on this one. So I think, one of the biggest surprises that came to me when I was there is just the amount of enthusiasm around international students, international interns. I think when I went, I was kind of like, what value could I bring in a networking situation? So I was always really anxious before any of those events, kind of carefully crafting what I would say and kind of what my pitch would be. But I was really surprised that there's just such an openness and such a willingness to want to help. And so I look back at my time in Shenzhen, and I look through kind of the contacts that have just helped me throughout my career. And a lot of it has been driven from those networking events that Sam mentions. CRCC put on several that I attended, and there are also just some that happened kind of organically in the city. And so for me, just having that experience of people being so open and so willing to connect you. I look back to my former boss and how many people he just introduced me to kind of on the whim. And that just having that amount of enthusiasm and eagerness around getting to know you is really, I think, something that surprised me.
Yeah, I guess very similar. I was always a little hesitant to kind of, I guess, put myself out there, and especially when I was launching my new business, kind of talking about it and things like that to new people. But people have been extremely welcoming and extremely encouraging, even, people I've met for only once or twice. So I guess in that sense, that has been really, really great in terms of also encouraging business flow and things like that for my own venture. But in terms of what Liz said, definitely people do seem very curious about international interns and things like that, and so they're happy to ask a ton of questions, and conversation flows really easily. You would think the language barrier would be a problem sometimes, but it really isn't. You find other ways of communicating and things like that. So yeah, networking has been a really great experience, I think, and a great skill to kind of develop. It's extremely useful to make connections that, may be able to be useful to you in the future as well. So even if that person doesn't necessarily seem very relevant to you right now, you never know, a year down the road or 2 years down the road, you might be very grateful that you know that person.
So many benefits from networking, and relationships matter, and they matter from a very early age. I think there's sometimes a hesitancy to wait until you're graduated to start networking, and you ladies are proving the point that every opportunity is an opportunity to network in a way that is going to and can help grow your career, or just identify opportunities that you might not have known. And then I love hearing about the welcomingness. I think that's probably a reason that a lot of students have maybe some anxiety or hesitation about pursuing an opportunity like this, leaving and going to another country and going through these experiences. So knowing how welcoming everyone is great, and I think takes a lot of pressure off if you're one who has a little bit of anxiety about meeting new people and networking, to know everyone's going to be so welcoming. And probably a real benefit to a program like CRCC, where a lot of those events are facilitated on your behalf as an intern. So I want you guys to share a little bit of advice. So everything you've been through, what you know now, what you knew then as an intern, Max, some of the advice that you give some of your students on a regular basis. So looking back for Liz and Sam and then Max, just as you've heard student stories as they're returning, what advice would you give your college self now that you know everything that you know, coming off of this experience and then going out into the business world and launching a career or a business?
Well, I'll jump in and just say, as Sam mentioned, I think it's really hard after a long day of work to go to these networking hours and start to make these connections and do kind of things after hours. But it's a really great idea to kind of get the jump on those sorts of activities, make those connections while you're there. I think a lot of students, when they come back from an international internship, they start to settle back in their hometown and might start to think about all the things that they could have done, while they were abroad. So better just to make the investment while you're abroad, start to make those connections right away.
I would say, my advice for students, especially, looking now where it's been almost 4 years since I've been in China, I would say document your experiences and make sure, you're really keeping track and really appreciating every experience. So I look back and sometimes I'll have like an interview, or I'll talk with a client, they'll ask about my experience in China. And it's funny because there's little things like, having to manage getting your boss's coffee when you don't really understand the language fully. Those are stories that, then I didn't think were very meaningful, but I wrote them down, and they've been tidbits that I've been able to bring up, whether it be through the recruitment process or through meeting with clients and things like that. So I would say, keeping track of those individual experiences and really appreciating them is something that I wish I did more of. I thought I kept a diary, but there's still aspects of the experience that I forgot. And I think also, on the networking piece, keeping in touch with the people you do go abroad with, looking back, the people that were in my CRCC Asia class are all over the world and doing all kinds of careers. And one of the things that I've appreciated about keeping in touch with them is that, if I have a question on, what's going on in, say, the fashion industry, there's someone I could reach out to who's working on the other side of the world who can kind of give me that perspective. Or, I wanted to go on a trip to London this summer, and there are a couple of people I interned with who are there that I know I can meet up with. So making sure that you leverage that that organic network you already have through CRCC or whatever international internship program you do is really significant, because you'll be surprised that a lot of the students who do that program go all over the world and take on all kinds of careers.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I definitely kind of wished I did this while I was still in college, or gave myself a little bit more time to try out different internships and try out different working experiences. I just feel like every time you step out of your comfort zone, you experience a ton of different new things that you wouldn't normally do in your own little bubble at home. I think just brings fresh perspective and makes you understand a little bit better, like who you are and what exactly you want to do. In my current work, I just meet a lot of people who I guess are a little bit lost, just because they're not entirely sure, once you graduate, what exactly is it that you're meant to do? You're kind of chucked out into this huge fish pond, and you don't really know where you fit in. And I think doing a CRCC internship or doing any sort of internship abroad or study abroad really helps you understand a little better exactly what your skill set is and what your interests and your passions are. And so personally for me, I kind of wish I had done it back when I was still a student instead of after I graduated, just to give myself a little more time to really, I guess, have that opportunity to experience different industries or different positions.
That's some fantastic. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Can I add just one quick thing to the documentation piece? Liz, I thought that was a really great point. So keeping a blog, I think, is a really good option too. Speaking from a university perspective, if you're doing the internship for credit, I would keep in mind any assignments that you're completing for your actual university. Those things can make great things to include in your portfolio when you start to apply for jobs. So if you wrote a research paper or even a reflection about your internship abroad from more of a professional perspective, you can just kind of give that to an employer as a deliverable project, as a demonstration of your accomplishments.
Yes, that's a fantastic point. It's so easy in the moment to think you're going to remember everything, but you're right, Liz, you don't. And so documenting that, having something to show people later, having something to put on your LinkedIn profile, just sharing about your experiences, what you've learned, any projects you've completed, all great things to kickstart your career. And then maintaining your relationships on networking. So underrated, but so important, and having those relationships available whenever you might need them is just so good to have, and staying connected in whatever way that you stay connected with your peers and professional relationships. So let's talk a little bit about skills. So you mentioned skills gained that you've used that would have been nice to have for Sam to bring back to college, or for Liz that jumpstart your career. So can you walk us through specifically, like what are some of the skills looking back that you really nurtured or developed through your experience? And how did you translate or apply those to what you're doing today?
Sure. So before I started my internship, I actually had the list still. So I made a list of all the skills that I wanted to gain out of the internship. So I knew I was going to work for a small venture capital, private equity hybrid fund. So I kind of knew that there were some technical aspects to the job that I wanted to gain. I wanted to understand the market a lot more, and I wanted to make sure that I was also building a network through that internship. Looking back, I can't say I crossed off every aspect of that list, just because it is a different country, and I think I overestimated some of the aspects of the job that would be similar to what I would be doing in the US. But I think that's actually was something that turned out to be a really big blessing for me, just in terms of looking later on when I wanted to go into investment banking, just because a lot of the students that I was quote unquote competing with all did kind of a similar thing where they started in the US and they had a job at a smaller fund and they had the same set of skills. But for me, having worked in Asia and having experience kind of working with companies that the valuations weren't as clear and I wasn't using a clear cut model, those are all experiences that I could draw upon and talk about that I felt really put me over the edge. I think also just the ability to work with all types of personalities and all types of backgrounds was something that was really valuable. It was a really small firm, so it meant that I had to work really closely with very senior people. And so having that aspect of responsibility and having to be flexible and understanding and sit through 3-hour lunches, even though we're not used to that in the US, I think those are all experiences that I was able to draw upon in my investment banking interviews. And I think I can't speak for the people on the other side 100%, but I think that they were really impressed by those things. And so I think that's what is the beauty of doing an international internship, is that you're not getting a cookie cutter set of skills that all of your peers are going to have in college. I think one of the benefits of the internship is that you get a unique skill set. It allows you to kind of separate yourself from the pack. And as long as you're able to effectively message kind of how those skills could be useful in your next career, I think it's one of those experiences that's super valuable, and it is a really nice thing to have on your resume.
I think adding on that, definitely interning abroad is something that is a very steep learning curve that I think a lot of people are sometimes maybe not prepared for, just because when I jumped into my first job after studying here, which was basically starting my career here, I think, navigating your way around a new country. I'd only been here for about 3 months, figuring out, my language skills were still a little bit wobbly. So, navigating through that in a workplace where it was majority Chinese was also definitely something that was another big learning curve. And then on top of that, not having your support network right there with you, I think is also something that really helps you grow, because you really need to learn how to do things on your own. You really need to learn how to not constantly rely on people, because in the end, you're the only person who can really handle the tasks that are given to you. And I think definitely that was an amazing experience. Like, I can't place enough value on that, just because when you're chucked in the deep end, you definitely just kind of soak up as much as you can. You absorb as much as you can just to kind of get through your day. And after the first couple weeks, you actually really kind of settle into it and you're on a roll. And I think you enjoy it a lot more, but it's definitely, stepping out of your comfort zone, as mentioned before. And I think that can help a person grow so much.
I would second everything that's been said so far. Just to add, if you are thinking about how to market the experience to employers after graduation, I would keep in mind that it's both an international, a study abroad, a travel experience, as well as a professional experience. So I would make sure in resumes and cover letters, in interviews, you're making sure you're capturing both of those aspects. So I think Liz and Sam both discussed those things very well.
Yeah, those are fantastic points and really great advice for our viewers out there. I'm seeing a lot just in themes of getting outside of your comfort zone and the importance of personal growth and how these opportunities can deliver that for you, gaining perspective, not just about maybe your career and what you want to do, but about yourself and your own strengths and abilities and what you're capable of. And then taking those things and really taking a step back and understanding how you want to move from there forward, whether that's pursuing a different kind of job or standing out from the crowd or being more competitive as a job applicant in certain industries, or just making sure that your next step is the right step for you, which I think are all fantastic takeaways. So if you're just joining us, we're here with Elizabeth, Sam, and Max, and we're having a conversation about how you can make the most out of a global internship. So if you have questions, if you've been watching and you have questions, please put them in the chat and we would love to answer them. And then we're going to continue to share a little bit more about the experiences and how you can get the most out of this. So Elizabeth, let's kind of circle back. What made you pick Shenzhen out of all the places you could have gone to do an internship abroad?
Yeah, so actually I had no idea where Shenzhen was on the map when I first heard about it. And I'm embarrassed to say that, considering I did study Chinese before that. But when I was picking the location, I think one of the things I mentioned to CRCC as I was trying to figure out what city would make the most sense, I knew I was interested in something entrepreneurial potentially, but I also kind of wanted the finance aspect of things. And so the city Shenzhen kind of popped up as kind of an opportunity to try something new. I know typically when people think of China, they think of Shanghai and Beijing as the business centers, but Shenzhen is really one of those rapidly growing cities. It's one of the emerging cities in China, and because of that, there's just so much investment, both from the government and from foreign entities as well. So it just makes it such a vibrant city. And so I'm super excited that I was able to choose that city. Looking back, it was the perfect fit for me. It's a much more relaxed culture, but also, there's also a lot of opportunities, a lot of great companies starting there. I think also one of the nice things about Shenzhen that people don't always know is that 30 years ago, it was actually a fishing village. And so what's unique about the city is that you have people from all over China and all over the world kind of convening on this one city that's developing rapidly. And so what that gives you is an opportunity not only to experience a new culture, whether it be coming from an American culture versus a Chinese culture, but different cultures within China. So understanding the different experiences and perspectives from people from, say, Western China or Northern China or Southern China. And I think just having that experience of just having that mesh of cultures was really valuable for me. And again, just it being such an entrepreneurial city, such a new city, just meant that there were so many opportunities, and also that people were really open to hearing what I had to say. I think, if you work in a more traditional business center, you have a lot more people with experience, but reality is a lot of the people that I was around were the kind of the first to do what they were doing. And so that meant that they're open to what I had to say or what my thoughts were. And so that just created a great environment for me to work. And looking back, I think it was a great decision.
That's fantastic. I think it is easy, right, to choose what is maybe a slightly more familiar, but opportunities like that, you're right, to work in a place where there is less structure, where you have more input, will just allow you to grow your skills more quickly in that type of program. Sam, where did you spend your time?
So I signed up for the Beijing program, and on a more personal note, the Great Wall has always been on my bucket list. So I was like, well, I'll just tick that one off as well while I'm there. And then I guess also Beijing being the capital with so much history and so much culture there, I really wanted to kind of step into that just because language skills was my priority. When I first signed up, I really wanted to kind of get my Chinese down pat to a point where it was, definitely something that I could confidently put on my CV and not have it say like Chinese intermediate. So definitely that was a big part of my choice there. And then also I had talked to a few people and I'd heard that in Shanghai, there isn't a huge push for personally to learn Chinese, just because a lot of people do speak English. It's much easier to get around the city without knowing too much Chinese. Whereas in Beijing, it was very much, this was 4 years ago. So it was very much like, you really do need a little bit of Chinese in order to fully experience the city and easily navigate your way around and things like that. So I figured putting myself in that would be a lot more conducive to pushing me to learn Chinese faster.
So that's a lot of aligning location with goals. Max, is that part of how you help students make decisions about where to go?
Yeah. So I was going to mention our program focuses exclusively on Shanghai, really because, as Sam mentioned, we want a location that can accommodate a wide variety of people with Mandarin proficiency. So our program can currently accommodate anyone from zero Mandarin ability through all the way through fourth year language at our university. So we were looking for, as I mentioned, a location that's a bit more kind of accommodating to international people that might not speak the language. Our program used to be in Beijing, and the numbers were a bit low because students had to take a certain level of Chinese to participate, but in Shanghai, that hasn't been a problem. One other benefit of Shanghai is the fact that there's a wide variety of internships available. So that's probably true in several other locations as well, but the internships in Shanghai just tend to be very impressive, very high quality, accommodating to several different majors.
I just wanted to add to that quickly, because when I think about sometimes people ask me the advice of, if I had to pick a city in China to work or to intern, where would I pick? And I think going back to Max's point and Sam's point, it's a lot about your goals. And I would say, not to fret too much about the city. I think going into Shenzhen was really nervous that if I made the wrong decision, if it's too small of a city, but I think every city has its own benefits. I think having that open conversation with your advisor or CRCC or whoever's kind of helping you through the internship process, and just laying out what you're looking for and kind of getting a sense of if the city offers that. But then, being open-minded. I look back and I think a lot of my classmates in CRCC, some of them, maybe decided that they think Beijing would have been the better choice, but looking back, Shenzhen was a great opportunity for them to gain a certain set of experiences, and they were able to go to Beijing the following year. So I think just being open-minded to those opportunities, but being also clear and kind of what you're looking for will really help, because like Max mentioned, cities like Shanghai are a little bit better if you don't have the language. Whereas if you go to a smaller city where there aren't as many international populations and there isn't as much infrastructure for you if you don't speak Chinese, then your experience may be a little bit altered. So just being a little bit clear around kind of what you're looking for will help for sure.
It's great advice. So know your goals and then look for the programs, opportunities, cities, and locations that will help you achieve them. So Elizabeth, I wanted to ask you a little bit for some advice on internships in general. So just day one internship, you show up, you're in another country, you're in a new place and new locations and meeting lots of new people. What is some of your best advice, just like day one, things you need to be thinking about or prepared for, or just even from behaviors and attitudes to be really successful in this experience?
Yeah, so I think it's a couple of things. I would say, being prepared is great. Looking back, I know I forgot the calculator on the first day. So that's definitely advice I love to give people when they're starting their internship. Just think through kind of all the contingencies of what you might need. But in that same vein, I think you can never fully prepare for an internship abroad just because there are so many surprises and things that you won't think of. But one of the benefits of going through a program like CRCC is you do get that coaching ahead of time. And so you're given a sense of what to expect day one. And so when I went in, my approach was to be as open and as eager as I could be, looking for ways I could bring value, even though, I knew that I was just an intern. I didn't have any experience in the industry. And so even small things like doing research on a particular topic or printing things ahead of time for a meeting, or trying to look and see if there are opportunities for your boss or your firm to find new clients, just finding ways to bring value even if you feel that it's small. I think those things go a long way, and again, it shows commitment to your firm. I think it's interesting now where I am in a position where I've worked with interns, and I would say that it holds true across the world, whether you're in America or in Asia. Just having that eagerness and that enthusiasm and wanting to bring value is something that people really appreciate. And I think on the last point I would say is ask a lot of questions. I was probably so annoying, but I asked at least 20, 30 questions a day. And I think it's just that eagerness and wanting to learn, allows you to connect with the people you work with. And people love talking about themselves and their experience. And so it ends up being a way for you to also build a relationship. And so that's something that, I always try to advise. It's just, even if it's something very basic, like what is this market like, or kind of what are our key competitors for our firm, or, what was the genesis for our particular investment thesis, or things like that. Just even if it's very basic, just having those conversations allows you to build relationships. You never know what you'll learn from those. And it's a great way to also build a network, because some of the questions I put forth, even my boss couldn't answer. So he connected me with someone who could, and that ended up being a relationship that I had. So, that's my advice, being both the intern and someone who has interns. I think it holds true across the world.
Yeah, I think similar to Liz, I, not only have done internships, but then also now my company takes on CRCC interns as well. And I think the interns that leave the most impact on us and are the most memorable are the ones that really are very proactive and eager to learn and eager to try new things. Being a slightly smaller company, I think we give interns a huge range of tasks, and sometimes interns react to that very positively, and sometimes they do get very overwhelmed by that, just because it's too many things to learn all at the same time. But definitely just having a really great positive attitude and accepting the challenge and just trying, I think is something that a lot of times is not like the most obvious or like the initial reaction that people have. But honestly, just saying like, okay, I'll give it my best shot is definitely something that I think a lot of employers really appreciate, because it just shows that you are willing to try and willing to learn. I think the other thing is also, yes, like being somewhat prepared. I think before I bring interns on, I definitely do, I guess, like a pre-check in terms of either a video call or even just, a 15-minute phone call to really understand like what is it and why is it that they're here and what they want to get out of it. Because I think it is a two-way street. Obviously, I'm giving interns a lot of different tasks to do, but also, I'm interested as an employer in what exactly it is that they want to achieve. Because if they're just here to, I guess, like have a good time or, experience new things. Sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes I really want to know, like, is it a particular skill that you want to pick up? Is it a particular experience that you want to have while you're here? And I think like articulating that to your employer and making sure that they understand like these are the kind of goals that I have, and this is the kind of experience that I want to have, and I want to figure out how I can bring value to you, but also then be able to experience that. I think that's like a very healthy relationship, and something that will make your time here, as best as it can be.
So as an employer and someone who works with students as part of what I do in my role, I can't plus one enough what you just said around being eager and open and willing to learn, asking questions, and trying and being communicative about what it is that you want to do and learn and grow, and how valuable that is in terms of getting the kinds of opportunities that are going to lead to that kind of growth and to a new place. So we have got a viewer question that I'm going to kick over to Max. So Pema asks, I'm a pre-med student interested in global health. I was wondering if employers valued interning in a developing country more as opposed to interning, I think she means interning in an undeveloped country more as opposed to interning in a developed country. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, good question. I would say ultimately that depends on what sorts of things you're doing on the internship. So I think in a lot of cases, it's true that in developing countries, there's more of a need for internships, service learning, those sorts of things. So for example, we have a program in Cape Town, South Africa, and on that program, students are able to kind of work in hospitals, of course, not doing any sort of hands-on, medical administration or anything along those lines. But the sorts of things that they're able to do tend to be a lot more meaningful because maybe the organization has a shorter staff, or maybe they have some sort of sector-specific knowledge that's helpful. So again, in general, I would say that depends on what you're doing, but in many cases, the need is greater in developing countries.
And sounds a little bit to Liz's point about where she spent her time in Shenzhen was when you're in a place that is not maybe as bustling, or where there may be more opportunity for you to get involved in some things that you may not have had a chance to in a more developed program or more developed country. Which is great advice, and both have great things to offer. I think even just the going and doing the service and doing the internship in itself is incredibly valuable, whether you're in a developed country or a less developed country, because it does show that willingness to get out of your comfort zone and go and serve and meet needs in a new location, and to do all the things that Sam and Max and Elizabeth have talked about, which is getting outside of your comfort zone and learning and growing and being willing to explore new things, because those will bring some really great benefits, not only in the present, but also into the future. Amal asked, how does Kaplan help students in their internships? So Amal, we help students who are on the path to graduate or professional schools specifically. So many students who want to do these experiences are looking to either expand their skill set, go on to graduate programs, business programs. Pema, who's watching us, is a pre-med student, so wanting to go on to medical school. And so we help students with those exams that they have to prepare for in order to apply to those programs. And so oftentimes a study abroad or internship is a period in a student's life where they're outside of their traditional on college or in-class experience, and maybe have some time and resources to devote to working on their future. And that's how we want to be able to help students. So thanks for all of your questions. If you're just joining us, we are talking with Max and Sam and Elizabeth about global internships and how you can use those to help jumpstart your career. So feel free to ask us any questions that you have, put them in the chat. We'll be happy to answer them. And so Max, in that same vein, can you tell us a little bit more about employers and what you've heard from employers or students who've come back from these programs? What are employers looking for from these interns? What have they valued in the internship experience, and how has that helped them maybe position themselves or package their experiences in a way that would be unique from those of other students?
Good question. I would say that it's very important to be able to articulate what you got out of the program. So a very popular question, and when you get back from any international experiences, how was it? And you might say, it was great, or it was amazing. But you're going to want to be a lot more specific and more detailed than that when talking about an employer. Sam did a really great job earlier mentioning different learning goals and kind of making sure you chat with your supervisor about what you're hoping to get out of an experience. So I would just make sure that when you're marketing that to employers after the experience is over. You're able to hit a few specific bullet points. I learned this, I did that. As I mentioned, having a deliverable project can be a really good way to demonstrate your success on a particular program. So whether that's a brochure or something that you made on your internship, any of those deliverable projects that you can showcase would be great for your portfolio.
And goes back to our to Liz's advice of documenting all the things so that we have them and that you can draw from those later, whether that's to work on a resume, portfolio, or anything else that's going to be helpful. So Max, we do get some questions too around funding and opportunities available. Why do a paid internship versus finding one on your own? What is the benefit of that? And what resources are often available at the university level to help support students who are interested in a global internship?
Do you mean doing a paid internship versus like an unpaid internship?
Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah. So of course, for some students, doing an international experience, an internship abroad might just not be financially possible. So as I mentioned, there are a lot of scholarships, financial aid, those things if you're going through university. But for some students, it might just not be in the cards. So if that's the case, doing a paid internship is a totally great option. But for students that are able to make that investment, again, as I mentioned, you're kind of combining both a study abroad experience with an internship experience. So if, for example, you're interested in studying abroad or doing an internship, and maybe you have to choose one because perhaps finances are tight or you only have one available semester, doing an internship abroad can be a really good way to combine both of those experiences. Most international internships are unpaid solely just because of visa regulations. So that I think is a good thing to keep in mind.
That's great advice. So we have another question from David. Can someone do an international internship even if they're a junior college graduate who is now an adult student? So yes, it's a great question. Is this type of international internship experience also applicable for those who are outside of college or have already graduated or who have just done a junior college program and instead of a four-year institution? Any advice or suggestions for David? So David, Sam had already graduated when she started her program and pursued this as a graduate. Elizabeth was an undergraduate. Max, do you hear back from students who have graduated interested in these programs, and what kind of advice do you have for them?
Yeah, so I do hear back from a few. As I mentioned, that financial piece can be a limitation to students, maybe after graduation, in that regard. So again, I think it's just about that general investment. So if it's in the cards, if you're interested in working abroad, even after graduation, doing an international internship, even if it's at some financial cost to you, can be a really good investment, great way to get a foot in the door. So sometimes when students have graduated or haven't finished, doing an international internship, again, can be just that kick that they need to get them into the professional environment they want to be.
I think that's a fantastic point, Max. And also one that if you're looking to change careers, I imagine an internship like this would be a key step in learning new skills and getting involved in new things that maybe weren't part of your original field of study. And finding an avenue like this would be a great way to kind of kickstart that shift and pursuing something where maybe you didn't have the academic background in the same area, but now you have learned these new skills and gained all this experience through this kind of internship, which feels like a good way to condense what maybe could take several years to build out in the working world into a shorter amount of time through a very intensive internship program like this.
Yeah, and Katie,
I think also, sorry, you go.
Okay, just to add to your point quickly on that, I was actually an economics and Chinese major. So when you look at typical finance roles, they're typically looking for someone who went to business school or did a typical finance route. And I think what was really valuable about my internship is it really steered me into that industry altogether. It gave me the foot in the door. Like you said, it did shorten that time. I didn't have to switch schools and go and redo business school all over again. I was able to kind of leverage some of the skills and the connections that I made in that internship and then come back to the US and apply in the regular pool for recruiting. And so internships like this are a great opportunity to do that. And I think one of the benefits of going internationally is that you do have a little bit more of a flexibility of also being able to use kind of the network and things like that to really figure out what you want to do. I think sometimes some of the US internships, particularly in business, are a little bit more rigid, and you may not have that flexibility to kind of learn if there are some other aspects that you're interested in. And so looking back, I think that was one of the benefits for me. It really changed my trajectory. Like I mentioned before, I was looking to do my PhD, and I ended up in business. So I think that's one of the benefits of being able to kind of take these opportunities and develop your skills and prove that you can handle the work.
Yeah, just building on that, I had very similar points to Liz, but I think just like utilizing the network that you make while you're interning is also something that I think is sometimes underrated. I mean, a lot of people that I see here, especially in China, international graduates and international students that actually intern, make a whole bunch of very meaningful connections, keep in touch with those people, and when they graduate or decide that they want to come back to China, actually using those connections to land a full-time job or to land a job in a different industry to where they were working in their home country. So I think any kind of, I guess, international internship or experience, like not only using that actual internship, but also all of the connections that you form during your time there can really help boost your employability in the future, as well as using those connections to actually land not only, a full-time job, but also, changing industries or changing careers or anything like that, using those connections as well to help you there.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I hear from students all the time that maybe are studying a liberal arts field and are interested in going into something business related, and oftentimes doing that internship can be that foot in the door. So those are both great points.
No, I love that. I am in a career that is not what I studied in undergrad, and I think every opportunity that you have to kind of to give yourself ways to grow and stretch beyond what you thought you wanted to do when you were 18 or 19 years old is a great, because life is full of great surprises and opportunities, just like you all have shared, and being able to leverage those to figure out who you are and what you want to do, I think is key to a lot of long-term success and happiness in your career. Sam, I wanted to ask you this. Did you always want to be an entrepreneur? Is that something that you uncovered during your internship experience?
No, yeah, I think I definitely wasn't planning on starting my company this young. I think it just so happened that CRCC and my time here, I guess, inspired or led me to a sort of experience that inspired what was the basis and foundation of starting my company. I think I saw a really great need or a gap in the market of startups not being able to attract the right talent, or especially cross-border startups. I work with a lot of startups from abroad that are looking to expand within the China market, and where they need people who can speak English and Chinese. And I think people who understand what it is to be that cultural bridge, or what it is to be culturally fluid, I guess. And so I think definitely just even being here and being plugged into the network through my time at CRCC and through my time doing the program helped, I guess, expose me to these different people and these different I guess, stories that I heard from entrepreneurs about their struggles in terms of recruiting. And obviously for any business to succeed, you need to be able to recruit the best people or the most suitable people. And so I think, I think definitely I wasn't planning on becoming an entrepreneur at 21, but I was definitely a bit clueless. But I think like just jumping on that opportunity and I think definitely just like being in that space where I was like, well, I'm in a new environment, and I'm learning so many new things all at the same time. I figured this was just one more new thing to learn. So I think it also gave me the courage that I didn't necessarily have when I was in my, I guess, like my bubble at home. And so, yeah, I think it was all very like inspirational in terms of helping me form that initial concept.
I think that is such a neat story, and one that is so cool to kind of have that experience organically lead to acknowledging a gap in the marketplace and then finding your fit in that and launching a company is probably a really unexpected delight to have come out of what you thought is an opportunity just to expand your Chinese, which is really cool and shows how just how many doors can be unlocked through getting outside of your comfort zone. What were some of the cultural takeaways? Like, are there something that you learned or experienced during your stay that you brought home that's made you think differently about the world around you, to be, things that you have shifted your worldview or perspective that you've really carried with you since your experience?
I think definitely within a business environment here, I can only speak for China specifically, but just cultural etiquette and business etiquette is definitely something that I think CRCC do a very good job in terms of briefing you on before you start your internship, but actually experiencing those on a day-to-day basis, interacting with colleagues, interacting with clients, is definitely something that will stick with you for a while. I think it's something that is a bit of an adjustment, just because how things are done back home can be something that is, at times even offensive over here. So I think definitely being mindful of all the different cultural differences, and it can be the difference between landing a deal and not landing a deal, or having a really great conversation with a client and completely ruining that relationship. And so I think being mindful of that, as well as, not necessarily, I after 3 months thought, okay, great, I do know the language somewhat, and I am able to communicate somewhat effectively, but understanding all of the I guess like the cultural foundations or the cultural, background to that language is something that I didn't quite have a grasp on, and didn't, I think, maybe do enough research into that, because I figured knowing the language was enough. But sometimes, just that translation is not enough. And so I think really getting a good grasp of that through your internship is something that's really, really valuable, especially in the future if you ever want to work in like a cross-border situation where you are dealing with clients from China, or you are dealing with doing Chinese business. I think it is extremely valuable.
Yeah, just to echo off of that point, I think the relationship aspect of it is really unique for China. There's a Chinese word guangxi, which it's really just about relationships in business. And I look back and I always studied it and kind of understood what it meant, but actually experiencing how relationships drive business, and not in the way that I think sometimes we think of it from the Western sense. Because I think sometimes in the classroom you think of that as, it's not fair, it's only in relationships. But actually, when you look at it and from a perspective of being on the ground and how relationships drive business, it's more about trust. So it's being able to trust the person that you're across from, and how do you build that trust, and that problem solving of having to get someone to trust a 19-year-old who just came from college, and to have them trust you enough to work with you and engage with you. That was just a really valuable experience in and of itself. It took a lot of different tactics, whether it be, going to try a new restaurant or a new cuisine with them and showing them that you're open to their culture, or, being open to visit them at their house and get to know their family and kind of build trust that way. And just seeing how trust really drives the system, and how it's really built up the Chinese economy. It was really fascinating to me, and it's something that I've taken away even now in my career. Even though a lot of the clients I cover are domestic, I still try to incorporate aspects of that. So whether it be keeping in touch with them, building communication with them, showing interest in their personal lives, these are little things that, I might not have thought of if I didn't have the internship. But seeing how relationships and that trust really allows you to have such meaningful and, powerful relationships in business, has really helped me in my own career and my own trajectory.
I think those are the kinds of learnings that are so hard to quantify and communicate sometimes, are those little or those soft skills that you build that allow you to come back and be more successful, build stronger relationships, and leverage those for business success and for business growth, which is great. We've got time for, I think, we're going to lightning round through these last questions. So Max, this one is for you, which is, let's see, did I lose it? If you don't know what you want to do and you don't know exactly what field you want to study, is it worth doing an internship abroad, or is that something that you should develop work experience at home first?
That's a really good question, and something that I think might apply differently on a case-by-case basis. But in general, I would always remind you of the financial considerations of doing an international internship. And if you are going abroad and you're spending money to do that, you probably want to make sure it's something that you're at least interested in doing. Also, once you get into something that you're doing, if you make a long-term commitment, it might be harder to pull out of it if you are abroad, if you aren't comfortable on your internship. That might kind of transfer over to other aspects of your life abroad. So if you're not really sure, it might be a better idea to gain some experience domestically, and then kind of use those experiences to then go abroad.
But I think on the other hand too, especially if you have a general sense of, where you want to go. So say you want to do business. I think one of the best things to do is figure out what about that career or that path you don't like. And so for me, it was like, I didn't know a thing or why I wanted to do venture capital. I just picked it. I said it sounded cool. And it's what was like on different documentaries I saw. So maybe that would be the best path to go. I did it. It turned out to be a great experience. Was it what I wanted to do long term? No, but being able to kind of have that experience and realize, there are aspects of it I really like, but it's not what I see myself doing long term was really valuable for me. So if you have a kind of general sense of like, I want to, do medicine, or I want to do business, or I want to do finance, whatever it be, just if that's the case, sometimes these international experiences are a great opportunity to really find out if it's something you're interested in, because I feel like it's even a safer environment because there's low pressure. That no one knows you there in a sense. It's not like you're going to have your classmates around. And so it's a chance for you to take a risk and really try and figure out yourself and figure out if this is what you want to do. And so I think sometimes if you have absolutely no idea what you want to do, sometimes just jumping in and trying something new can be a great way to kind of figure out what that might be. At least you find out, at worst you find out it's not what you want to do and it didn't fit, but at best it could turn out to be, your career for the long term.
I think sometimes when you read a job description or when you read marketing internship, you're not quite fully aware of exactly what a marketing or internship entails. And so what I actually get a lot of candidates that come to me that ask for job advice and stuff to do is to actually go and read job descriptions. Like, I know it sounds really boring, but to really fully understand what that job entails or what that internship will entail, and then being able to figure out, will I bring value to that? Like, is that something that will be, challenging yet also interesting for me? And do I have any basic foundation skills that I can bring to this internship? I think those are things that, people don't necessarily always think about. And I think it is definitely something that's super important, because if you want to get the most out of your internship, it'd be great if you weren't kind of, I guess, a little clueless from day one. It's always good to have a very good understanding of exactly what you're stepping into. And so reading boring job descriptions or doing the research behind what that company and what that internship entails, I think is also something that people can definitely do as prep beforehand. And then that way, once you have a better understanding of exactly what you're stepping into, you can then have a better understanding of what exactly you should be picking. Should I be doing that marketing internship in Shenzhen, or should I be doing that finance internship in Beijing? It's something that you'll be, if you're informed, you're going to be able to make a much better decision. So even if it's not something that you're completely sure of, the more informed you are, the better.
All fantastic advice. So I love that we got so many questions from our viewers. Thank you so much. I hope we were able to answer them either live or in the chat from our teams who are supporting us and making sure that we get to everything that you have questions about. I think some of the big takeaways is a global experience can benefit you in so many ways, from tangible skill building that you can apply in your future career to personal growth and soft skill growth that will help you either uncover better who you are, what you want to do with your life, and help you just uncover the opportunities that you may not have discovered otherwise. And again, as the world gets smaller, your perspective needs to grow, and having that understanding and bringing that back to your experiences can help in so many cool ways. I want to thank our panelists for sharing their advice. So Max, Elizabeth, Sam, thank you for being on and sharing your experiences, and thank you for sharing your recommendations with our students. I have so many regrets right now for not doing this when I was in college in this way, because I think everything that you talked about sounds so cool and would have been so inspiring and fun. If you find yourself inspired to explore some of the opportunities discussed today, we would love for you to do that. If you're considering CRCC and looking at what kind of programs they have to offer, Joel's going to share a link in the chat. And if you'll fill out that form within the next 72 hours, you'll receive a $100 discount on the program. So the application is free, just takes a few minutes, but allows us to better understand what your interests are and help you find opportunities that may be an appropriate fit. So again, thank you to our panelists. Thanks for sharing your stories tonight with us. And if you have any questions, just give us a shout. The video will stay here and on YouTube, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that come in later. So thanks again, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.